Greetings, esteemed speakers and participants joining us from all over the world. My name is Jessica Lee. I serve as the Vice President of the International Youth Conference, and I am honored to moderate this session focused on tackling challenges and issues related to poverty and food disparity, finding sustainable approaches and strategies, and empowering upward mobility and youth engagement. Today, we are opening the day with a crucial topic on what it takes to drive sustainable and innovative actions and solutions to improve living standards, have equitable access to and consumption of food, especially healthy food, ensure economic sufficiency and equity, lift people and families out of poverty, and provide opportunities for them to have a brighter and better future. Joining us today are Her Royal Highness Princess Dr. Moradeun Ogunlana, who is the recipient of the Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award from the White House and the Office of the President of the United States of America, President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. Founder and CEO of African Women's Health Project International, AWHPI Global Foundation. President/CEO of the Innovative Global Consulting, IGC, visionary and leader for the Africa 259 project initiatives, global ambassador for peace, and chair of the First Ladies Forum. We also have Lorena Levano Gavidia joining us today. She is the GBV specialist and youth inclusion focal point for social sustainability and inclusion of the World Bank. We have Nicholas Key joining us today. He is the founder and CEO of Key Farms. He's also the Jury's Choice Award winner of the pitch competition at the 2023 World Bank Group Youth Summit. Welcome, esteemed speakers, to this session.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. I would like to turn the floor to Her Royal Highness Princess Dr. Moradeun Ogunlana. May we learn more about your area of focus and be enlightened by your passion and commitment, such as to women's empowerment, girl development, the SDGs, and civil society participation. And to you, Her Royal Highness.
Thank you very much. I am the founder and CEO of the African Women's Health Project International. And of course, our main focus is really to empower women and children. We started off in Africa and now we're globally all around the world. And our focus on strengthening women's capacity for active participation in local, national, and international development. We'll provide healthcare services, scholarships, training programs, life skills, employment, and entrepreneurship programs. And of course, you mentioned we have launched the First Ladies Forum and Economic Development Summit and the Africa 259 project. Really, we are going to be talking more about that as we go on. But we operate and serve in 9 countries and have chapters in 26 countries all around the world. And we've distributed over $5 million annually in supplies and equipments, into in impoverished areas all around the world, especially in Africa. And of course, because our organization started because we saw a need for uh, for cancer awareness programs in health services, especially for women mothers. We we aim to bring about mammography screening in some of the impoverished local communities all around the world. And one of the things I'm so excited about is the fact that African Women's Health Project International has been granted special consultative status with the United Nations ECOSOC status, which is the United Nations Economic and Social Council. And this prestigious recognition acknowledges our organization's commitment to advancing the health and well-being and empowerment of women and girls in Africa and globally. And as a structured partner with the UN, we'll work closely with the UN and especially working on the 17 Sustainable Development Goals in order to be able to advocate for policies and programs that promote gender equality and women empowerment. We want to support the implementation of the SDG goals and provide expertise and resources to address health disparities and promote sustainable development. And we do this by conferring our ambassador for peace. Those are the main areas of focus to actually carry out the work of the UN. I'm honored to be speaking today on the critical issues that affect us all: poverty, food disparity, and empowerment for upward mobility. We gather here today on this whole weekend, in at UCLA and online globally, all collectively, coming here to as global citizens, united in our quest for a more equitable and just world. Yet we are reminded that millions of people still suffer from poverty, hunger, and marginalization. Poverty is a scourge that perpetuates inequality, limiting access to education, healthcare, and opportunities. Food disparity exacerbates this issue in all forms, with many going hungry while others waste resources all around. But we have the power to change these narratives. Empowerment through education, skill development, and economic opportunities can break the circle of poverty. At AWHPR Global Foundation, we have seen this transformative impact of empowerment of women programs, especially with women and girls. And I want to reiterate this because 20 years ago, actually over 20 years ago, in 1999, I witnessed firsthand a mother with 9 children who was literally dying of breast cancer, living on the roadside. And I saw that because the little boy that was about 9 years old actually came by where we were having picnics by the beach, and we sort of discarded um, some foods that we had just finished. And this little boy was so hungry like this that he came to where we were at, and he was carrying picking up the food with sand and all and putting it in his tattered clothing. And once he saw that we had seen him, he ran quickly over to where a shack, it was like a make shift shack, and his mother was there with other five children. One of them was about a little bit over a year, about a year and a half old. That one was still suckling from the breast of one of our breasts. She had her clothes. She was. You can see the whole situation. This was over 20 years ago, and I still remember it quite clearly because as the little boy ran over there, is the other children scrambled towards him, and he gave them the food that he had picked up from the sand where we were actually having picnic, and they were eating from that. And the mother was busy breastfeeding a child on one breast, and the other breast was gangrene. It was gangrene. It was oozing. It had so that was a clear situation that I saw that has left a lasting impact in my life, knowing that I had to do something, and that in any which way that we can, each and every one of us is charged to do something. Um, and at that point, we formed the African Women's Health Project International. We got help for the woman, but unfortunately, she was so far gone in her cancer journey that she passed about 6 months later. But what we took from that, the fact that this we don't want to have a repeat of this ever again. We took charge of the children and actually established our first orphanage at that time. And subsequently, I got a lot of my friends. I just happened to be surrounded by medical doctors. I am not a medical doctor. My PhD actually is in international relations. But because I saw that need that was needed there, I reached out to all the different people that are medical doctors. My younger brother is one of them. He's a medical doctor, and came together and we formed the African Women's Health Project International in order to bring health and wellness to women and children. One of the things we found out, especially on the continent of Africa, especially in sub-Saharan African countries, is the fact that You have women who's had 5, 6, 7 children. They've never had pap smear in their life. So we wanted to change those narratives. And I'm so happy that, since our inception, we've achieved significant global growth and impact with expansions. We have, like I mentioned, in 9 different countries, but we've gone global and we're doing a lot of things even in the Middle East, in the Gulf regions, and as well as in Asia, in different areas, just really making sure that the message is carried and we're giving voice to the voiceless. And I'm hoping that with partnership, with collaboration, because I do know that with whatever work that we're doing in this world, the work for humanity is a collective effort of many incredible individuals and corporations coming together to bring service to the world. Thank you. And I think the host is reconnecting. But one thing I wanted to talk about, just really continue on, is that at AWHPI Global Foundation, we're committed to combating poverty, food disparity, and empowering individuals. And one of these ways we do it is by economic empowerment programs. That is, we provide skills, training, mentorship, and microfinance opportunities to women and girls. We do a lot of things in food security projects by implementing sustainable agricultural practices and food distribution network and nutrition education. And lastly, we provide education and healthcare support, that is building schools, providing scholarships, and offering healthcare services to marginalized communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Her Royal Highness Princess Moradeun Ogunlana. Apologies, there was a little bit of technical difficulty on my side, but I am glad that I am back. Thank you so much for your introduction and remarks. Strengthening collaboration between civil society and other sectors is important to ensuring strong and effective partnerships to live well and move upward towards achieving better economic well-being and position, and providing services needed to maintain well-being and healthy lifestyles. Thank you, Her Royal Highness Princess Dr. Moradeun Ogunlana, for highlighting the challenges we face in society today and the urgency to change the current state and bring positive change. Thank you for sharing your experience that has left a lasting impact on your life and motivated you to lead and initiate actions that bring health and awareness to the African continent and beyond.
Thank you.
Thank you. And next, I turn the floor to Lorena Levano Gavidia. The World Bank Group dedicates itself to fighting poverty and strategizing approaches to support people so more people can gain better health, economic status, and livelihoods, especially those who come from disadvantaged communities. Lorena, I look forward to gaining more insights about the SDGs and youth inclusion, and I hope that our audience is too.
Thank you, and I think we're totally aligned with all the words. We need to work together. We're going to talk about the need to align our strategies. So yeah, this is the presentation today. As Jessica mentioned, I'm Lorena Levano. I work the Social Sustainability and Inclusion Unit at the World Bank. Today, I'm going to talk about different topics, how we have to think the SDGs from global to local, also how we have to think about the intersectionality of the identities of the people we're serving, but with a multisectoral strategy that I think was also mentioned before. And finally, how inclusion is so key and important for development. So, well, I don't know what is moving the slides, but I think we're all familiar with this chart. I'm not gonna stop there. But in general, if we have a global look at the SDGs, we know that 193 countries are committed to achieve these goals. And these are not simple goals, they are global problems like climate change, inequality and poverty, health emergencies, and armed conflicts. So we have 17 goals, 169 targets, and 231 indicators that we are doing the best we can, but maybe it's not enough. So at this point, we know that no country, firm, or institution can overcome these challenges, such as climate change or inequality, by themselves. So that's why we need the commitment and joint action that, for instance, we're doing today to achieve this sustainable and inclusive future for the planet and for its people. So this is just like a drawing about how we are or how we should work together. And this is because we have cross-border challenges and we need to work from an aligned perspective. All these actions should be interconnected, but the big problem or challenge is that we have to do it locally too, adapting to the specific context and ensuring that concrete solutions are relevant and effective for the communities. And for that, we think too, as Jessica was mentioning, that partnerships for the goals, which is SDG 17, is key. Also, regarding the topic of today, we have to think about how can we address poverty and food disparity with the youth. We know that we have these two specific goals, the SDG 1 and 2, of no poverty and zero hunger. So specifically, we need, when we think about poverty, to do target efforts to address the unique challenges, but also all the positive things that young people have. Also, to ensure that they have food security and reduce malnutrition among these populations. Unfortunately, what the data is telling us is we have, like the youth have higher rates of unemployment, is 9% more than compared to adults, according to ILO. Also, about 258 million children and youth are out of school or any type of education. And 33% of the world's youth experience moderate or severe food insecurity. So for that, we have to align to do all these youth-centered solutions that includes the education and training to invest not only in the access but in the quality. And this should also include vocational training to keep the youth with the relevant skills. And I think now more than ever, we don't only think about the skills and the traditional skills, but also about the social emotional skills and the adaptation on this globalized world. In the agricultural initiatives, we need to support youth-led agricultural projects. These may be also affected by the migration of youth from rural to urban areas. So that's a topic that we should address too. And finally, the access of resources, including technology, that is key in this era. We have to do all of this thinking in intersectionality way and also with multi-sectoral strategies. The intersectionality from the demand is telling us that we need to involve citizens in an inclusive way, also, but with an emphasis of vulnerable populations. And I'm going to talk about the intersectional approach more. But also from the offer of our services, we have to think in more than one sector because it's not enough working in little silos. In the intersectional approach, we have that this is a concept that highlights discrimination that is influenced by multiple identities. And for the SDGs perspective, we need to think about this because we have to think about the complexity of the people we're serving, the different inequalities that an individual can feel or experience at the same time. And finally, we have to think about what is the people that we need to target more specific efforts. An example of this is this cumulative disadvantage for secondary education completion in Bolivia. We have, for instance, that in general, a Bolivian Spanish-speaking man would have certain percentage of probability to complete a secondary education. But if we're talking about a Bolivian that is a Spanish-speaking woman, it has 5% of disadvantage for this completion. Then, if you are a man but also speak Quechua, that is one of the traditional language, you have 14% less probability to complete secondary education. But if you combine being a woman and speaking Quechua, it gives you a 28% of disadvantage. So this is really important, and it's showing us how in reality and in a practical way intersectionality works. Also, we have to think about the multisectoral approach. We have to think how it's essential to address all these SDGs, combining the strengths and resources, but also perspectives of all the different sectors that we work, to maximize resources, knowledge, and technologies, but also to address these goals and challenges in a comprehensive manner. Finally, we are going to talk about the inclusion for development. Sustainability requires an inclusive view of citizens to achieve this social feasibility. For this, we are focusing on empowering youth for upward mobility. We think that ensuring young people have access to social and financial services, land, and technology is key. Unfortunately, youth from marginalized communities are more likely to face the barriers to upward mobility. For instance, young women are 1.6 times more likely to be unemployed. Also, we need to ensure that young people, regardless of their background, have access to opportunities and resources. And I'm going to show that in the next slide too. But for that, as we were mentioning, we need multi-sectoral interventions. When we're talking about social inclusion, the bank report Inclusion Matters tell us that we have to enhance the ability, opportunity, and dignity of people who are in disadvantaged situations, including markets for land, housing, labor, and credit, accessibility for quality of services, including especially for youth, education, health, and social protection, and finally, spaces for participation and representation, including reinforcing social cohesion and strengthening governance. So recovering the focus on people forces us to focus on behaviors, attitudes, knowledge, and emotions, and think about their different identities. For this, we also think we have to do a paradigm shift from silos to interdisciplinarity, from competence to cooperation, for compliance to meaningful participation, and stop thinking about the status quo, but swift to transformation. For that, we think youth inclusion is key because you have a lot of these characteristics. And just to finalize, think about that youth are not only vulnerable to the challenges, but they're essential since they're the present and the future for the planet. Our resilience as human beings rely on their capacity and our capacity to adapt to these challenges. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorena, for your introduction and remarks. The partnership between countries can solve cross border challenges, and we have to start locally in order to identify the issues and connect across different sectors to find innovative solutions to addressing them. The statistics that you provide support why intersectional and multi-sectoral approaches are important to gather resources and find sustainable solutions that not only address the issues, but also provide sustainable and quality services that allow the continuance of better living and effective and meaningful youth inclusion. Thank you, Lorena. And next, I would like to turn the floor to Nicholas. And Nicholas, I am very interested in learning about your background and how you are able to find sustainable solutions to addressing climate action. May we please learn more about the work that you do?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My background is not exactly the most conventional, at least along the pathway of where I am today. I am coming from tech, or at least my background is in tech. I had been in tech for a little over 16 years at this point. And so the transition that I made into the climate change space was a bit of, I guess, a huge pivot, but it was based on a lot of the things that I had done in the past intersectionally with the, I guess, the side quests that I had been embarking on. Um, Aside from tech, I had been doing some work in the human rights space, as well as a policy space, and even renewable energy tech. And so moving and shifting into farming was more of a serendipitous act based on, I guess, my past experience with understanding the general landscape of climate change at a policy level, to then being able to look and glean on a lot of the areas where there could be improvements in my own region within the Caribbean, to then being able to zero down on specific problems that I knew vulnerable communities in Jamaica and the Caribbean were facing. For us in the region, typically you'll find that farmers, youth, of course, and of course fisher folk are some of the most vulnerable. And so they are most affected by, aside from the macro effects of climate change, such as, greenhouse warming, greenhouse gas emissions warming, and warming oceans. They're most affected by the local implications of, say, the mining and tourism industries, which contribute to a lot of the pollution that we currently have in our seas today. And so, in recognizing some of those problems, I'd had moved down the pathway of approaching fisher folk, or at least reflecting on some of the challenges that they would have with respect to not being able to catch enough fish to not only feed themselves, but also to feed their families. And of course, being in on the lack of revenue and income opportunities for them with respect to them not being able to move economically upward. And of course, them not being able to move past a certain class or stratosphere within the realm of poverty. And so that is how Key Farms was essentially born. Those are our starting roots. And so we basically looked at some of those same problems and then identified ways in which we could introduce similar practices that were in alignment with the vulnerable communities that we were serving, so that they could take advantage of some of the more innovative and adventurous things that could provide them with the same revenue and income as they would have probably had in the past, as if they were catching the same amount of fish as they probably are not catching today. And so, what that looks like is having an ocean farm model whereby we grow things like sea moss and sea cucumbers, um, protect seagrass, and of course, grow oysters. Right now, we're focusing back on sea moss, but we have this model whereby we grow all of these things, or we try to grow all of these things in a regenerative and permaculture way, and so that we can help to restore the oceanic ecosystem, and by extension, help to alleviate some of the challenges with respect to climate change. And so we scale a lot of these things, a lot of these environmental impacts, by involving the vulnerable communities themselves, i.e., fisherfolk and those within the communities, into these practices, so that they can, of course, develop their own ocean farms and grow sea moss and grow oysters and all of those biological ecosystem restorative, I guess, biodiversity, so that they can help to increase said biodiversity, reduce ocean acidification, and of course, sequester a lot of carbon at the same time. And while they themselves and us, while we are collectively impacting the environment positively in that way, they at the tail end are able to not only glean on resources from having to sell a lot of these biodiversity. So they would sell the sea moss, they would sell the oysters, but this would essentially help to feed themselves and to feed their families, and help to revitalize the agricultural industry in Jamaica and the Caribbean. And so that is what we set out to do. We've been doing this for a little over 3 years now. And so our vision is for this to be replicated across the global south, or by extension, or at least more commonly known as the global majority today. And what we're pretty much doing is focusing on one, for sure, alleviating poverty by having vulnerable communities take agency into their own climate action. But we're also reducing food insecurity by providing an alternative food source that probably would not have been looked at in the past. And by also providing this food source and having the surplus being sold, it can then enable these same vulnerable populations to feed themselves more healthily whenever they need to purchase goods and services. And so this chain of command then leads towards them being able to be economically empowered to move upwards throughout the social class and stratosphere. And so that is the key farms model. And so we gleaned on this especially because we had recognized that in Jamaica in particular, more than half of the population is food insecure, meaning that they probably only survive on an average one meal or even zero meals per day. And this is especially true for vulnerable communities like fisherfolk, like regular land farmers, and especially youth. And to that end, aside from just including the typical fisher folk and farmers who are, of age or a bit older, we involve youth at the same time. And so we train youth in communities that have similar issues, or we go to different agricultural schools to embark on the training sessions with them so that they can set up their own ocean farms at the same time. And this is how we are trying to encourage youth in agriculture, because we recognize that in order for a lot of the problems to be solved, aside from the typical industries that the youth usually go in, tech maybe, and of course finance and those typical customer service jobs, especially in Jamaica, we want to encourage, I guess, this new frontier of agriculture that is more climate smart and climate action oriented. And so we believe that if we reorient ourselves in this direction, this at least we'll be able to grow this industry steadily and more profitably than the other industries that we currently have in the market. And so, in all of this, we're not only encouraging the current generation to embark on something that is a bit more exciting today, but we're encouraging a lot of, I guess, new types of jobs that could be embarked on that really haven't been available in the past, especially for Jamaica, especially for the Caribbean, and especially systematically for the global south.
Thank you, Nicholas, for your introduction and remark. The agricultural and farming industries can benefit significantly from youth participation. And being able to sustain and attract employment from younger generations is crucial to maintaining the overall health of society. And youth have been momentous in driving forward innovative and sustainable climate action solutions and approaches. And thank you for sharing your journey and how you took action to restore the ocean ecosystem and alleviate the challenges related to climate action and climate change. Thank you for identifying ways to alleviate poverty, provide food source to especially vulnerable populations, and thereby secure the needs to support them to move upward economically and socially. Wow, your introductions, all of the esteemed speakers' introductions are amazing. And now I would like to go over to the next section of the session, which is asking a very relevant question. And that is, what are the advantages that civil society and nonprofit organizations have when it comes to mobilizing and educating about initiatives related to advancing the SDGs, specifically those focused on eliminating food disparity, reducing and ending poverty, and advocating for upward mobility? And how can civil society and nonprofit organizations overcome challenges related to the same. Now, I would like to open the floor to our esteemed speakers.
One of the ways that we are doing at AWHPI Global Foundation, we fall under the civil society nonprofit organization. And as an ECOSOC status approved organizations, we put up programs that's committed to actually combating poverty, this food disparity, and empowering individuals for upward mobility. And one of our initiatives include economic empowerment programs. We provide skills training, mentorship, and microfinance opportunities to women and girls. These last few days, we were just at the UN. We just came from the UN in the last couple of days, where we had some of our ambassador for peace who are tackling especially the first five of the SDG goal. From the no poverty to zero hunger, then to health and wellness, and then you have the education, and then you have the gender equality. So those first five SDG goals, our ambassadors are working actively on that. And specifically, we have organizations in Ghana that's actually committed to doing working on food security projects that by implementing sustainable agricultural practices, food distribution network, and nutrition education. And also, too, one of our partners actually has a microfinance banking system that she carries out with the local market women in Ghana. We have one of our partners and one of our ambassadors working even here in America, in Dallas, Texas, Minnie's Food Pantry. That this is the way that they are combating that. The founder of the Minnie's Food Pantry, Dr. Cheryl, she's they've fed over 27 million people annually, and they do this every year since their inception. And we're so happy to have collaborations and partnership like that. Third, we work on education and healthcare support. That is most especially with building schools, building libraries, even within schools, going into some of the different schools in the local community, especially in the vulnerable populations, more vulnerable populations. One of our ways of helping with that also too, we provide scholarship, especially to high performing students. This last year, we just graduated 58 students that were really failing behind, but because of the support from our organization and so for some of our partners that we've collaborated with, that have input in, that they were able to actually go and gain full right scholarships into higher educations to universities. We offer healthcare services and in the marginalized communities. Of course, we do a lot of advocacy and policy engagements. Because one of the things I love about the UN is the fact that you have the government entities, you have the civil society, and then you have the private partnerships. So all three working hand in hand. And with AWHPI, that's one of the things that we model our organization about, because we do know that we need all these three areas in order for us to actually have any type of measurable growth. We work with government and stakeholders to shape policies and programs that address poverty and inequalities. And our approach is very holistic in itself. It's community-led and it's sustainable. We know that anything we do we are global organizations, but working at grassroots levels. We believe in the potential of individuals and communities to actually drive the change, because that's exactly ultimately what is going to have. We have established several initiatives and combat, just in this area of combating poverty, making sure that we drive the change that we want to have. We have sister school global initiatives where we're bridging the gap between communities and fostering global citizenship. This program connects schools, especially here in the US. We connect them across the globe with students in Nigeria, in Ghana, in Kenya, in Uganda. These programs connect schools across the globe, promoting cultural exchange, education, and empowerment. Because by partnering with schools in different regions, we are able to facilitate cross-cultural understanding and exchange programs, and of course, to access to a quality education and resources for them. We have this, our second program that we work on is the AWHPI Learn Pink Breast Cancer Awareness. You remember, I mentioned our organization was founded because we saw a need in that space. And we are dedicated to educating communities and empowering women to take control of their health. And not only just women, but men also too. And this initiative focuses on breast care, breast cancer education and awareness, early detection and screening activities, support services for survivors and their families, research and advocacy to improve treatment options. And one of the things with our Learn Pink program, we have on our board, we have quite a lot of oncologists and healthcare professionals that are actually in that cancer space, really working actively hand in hand and making sure that we bring the awareness into the community, but also to making sure that we bring along the survivors to share their journey along the way. And of course, we bring in a lot of, and we do a lot of these things through the youth program so that they can be the agent of change. And with that, we've reached thousands and thousands of people. The third one is we do the Healthy Mothers Awareness Campaign, which is a vital initiative that focuses on maternal health, wellness, and empowerment. And we believe that healthy mothers are the foundation of healthy families and communities. And through this campaign, we are working to raise awareness about maternal health issues and disparities. Of course, we want to provide access to prenatal care, education and resources, and we want to promote healthy lifestyles and wellness practices that support mothers and families through advocacy. And all of these are in alignment with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. We are proud to be a part of the Africa 259 project, which is one that's actually geared towards climate action plan for the sub-Saharan African countries. In 2021, right after COP26, I was in Abu Dhabi at Hadipec, coming off of COP26 then. So in Abu Dhabi, we sat around the table and we saw that there was a big gap. There was a need for actually having a sustainable climate action plan for the sub-Saharan African country itself, because one of the things we saw is that the blueprints that's being used for sub-Saharan African countries are the ones that work in the Western world. And we know that the terrain in Western world and the sub-Saharan African countries is completely different. So the whole idea is to come up with a program that actually will bring together a resource manual for sub-Saharan African country using the United Nations SDG goals 2, 5, and 9. We believe that, when we tackle the zero hunger, when we tackle that, and then we make sure that, equality is embedded in the middle right there, and then the SDG goal 9, which is the innovation and infrastructure development, making sure that the basic infrastructure is developed, because before we can even start dealing with a lot of global issues, we have to make sure that the people are fed, people are healthy, and they have clean water. Those are things that matters to them that do not have the vulnerable society. So the best way, of course, we believe, is that to actually give them the need that they need first, and then bring them up to speed. So those are some of the areas that we've been working on, and I'm just happy to say that, together with, we do believe that collaboration is the key, and that's the reason why when you look at the Sustainable Development Goals, you have 17 of them. All the 16 cannot work except you had that 17 as the anchor. The 17, which is the collaborative partnership, and is needed in order to be able to have any kind of measurable goal and to be able to advance the agenda for 2030. So those are some of the areas, and I'm happy that we're here in on this esteemed panel. We have different areas, yet we're so collectively aligned, and that is what is so wonderful about, and I want to be able to see this carry out even after this youth summit. Thank you.
Thank you, Her Royal Highness Princess Moradeun Ogunlana, for your remarks. And from your remarks, we see how our everyday actions can contribute to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, and how connections and effective communication alongside meaningful actions can empower societies and vulnerable populations to improve their lives and achieve economic stability through different areas such as healthcare and skills training. Lorena and Nicholas, would you like to provide your input?
Yes, well, I think it's a really, really important questions, and as we're mentioning, it's really crucial to be aligned, and these sustainable goals that are global help us to be aligned. So, in general, I think civil society and nonprofit organizations are crucial, of course, especially because they can have their primary advantage as have that deep root connection with the local communities. As I was saying, we have these global challenges, but we have to do it in the local communities. So this is enabling these organizations to understand and address the specific needs that they know better than us that work at international level. So the grassroots approach is really important, and it not only it's important to understand and ensure that the interventions that we're fostering are culturally relevant, but also I think they're key to promote ownership. Sometimes we tend to in international organizations or in international development to go to communities, try some pilot efforts or even the efforts that we're trying at scale, but if we don't have the ownership of the local communities, it's going to be really hard to succeed. And then another key thing that these civil society and nonprofits have is a flexibility to innovate and adapt quickly. Sometimes, in general, national governments or regional organizations or even international organizations, we have long-term strategies, sometimes 5 years, 20 years. So it's hard to adapt to all these evolving changes, the technology, the different contexts in the countries. So I think this is helpful to allow us to pilot new initiatives and scale when they are successful already. They can also serve as powerful advocates. They help us to raise awareness and mobilizing resources, but also mobilizing resources can be hard at the local level. So I think these civil society and nonprofits help us a lot to do the capacity building for communities that we really need for our projects to success. Um, but importantly, I want to also draw attention on the organizations that are youth led and the focus on youth engagement. Sometimes there are a lot of organizations that work for the youth but that are not youth led, and I think that's really important because that tell us that we really have an engagement with the voices of youth themselves, making their own decisions and crucial decisions that are going to affect their lives. And then also thinking about the SDG 17 and how can we work together. Also, they have the challenges of limited resources or political barriers. So for that, it's essential that these CSOs and nonprofits work strategically with governments and international organizations like us and enhance their capacity to provide the support, but also to make their voices stronger for the advocate work. And then, yes, we can collaborate, be in line for national policies and have these sustainable solutions at a global level, hopefully. But yes, in summary, we're really glad to be here and open to anything and cooperation and alliances that we can do to actually promote good and successful efforts.
Yes, thank you, Lorena. You have touched upon how the grassroots approach is important to promote ownership and a sense of agency in addressing the issues and challenges that we see in our communities. This can include taking action locally. Education can lift people and families out of poverty because it allows people to learn the skill sets and gain valuable experience that support them towards upward mobility, securing stable financial and economic sources, and securing food and healthy food for consumption. Thank you, Lorena, for your remarks. And Nicholas?
Yeah, I'll just quickly touch on well, a lot was said, but I'll just quickly touch on I guess the uniting factor that we should all remember. Civil society exists because governments typically don't have the capacity to reach at least certain vulnerable communities or populations that are typically ignored or just have not been able to engage with the typical infrastructure and systems that we have available to us. And for civil society to really propel and do the type of work that we essentially need to do, it requires a new framework or an amended framework to how we think about resource allocation in the context of global development. So, what you would usually hear, at least within the sphere, is something along the lines of public-private partnerships towards getting things done. We need to at least harp on another P that hasn't been really looked at least intensively, which is philanthropy, especially within the climate change context. What you find is that because this entire space ecosystem and industry isn't as developed as others like tech, you find that a lot of the resources are not lent in that domain because it is a bit more exploratory and a bit more risky. And so what has typically pulled industries to the forefront and to the mainstream arena and had made them popular is to ensure that we have massive de-risking coming from the philanthropic sector towards making the type of space that we want to see today that at least we want to see developed as we would have imagined. So this looks like, as Lorena mentioned, including or at least ensuring that we have as many grassroots initiatives being supported, but also pushed through the pipeline of development all the way towards case studies, and then having those case studies being replicated across the fold and amended accordingly towards cultural context. That is how we'll be able to have proof of work to then ensure that we have more philanthropic dollars flowing, but more importantly, show various investors and the government that this industry in and of itself is serious enough to be taken towards a more strategic level of engagement to involve youth, to put it towards more strategic plans of development within said countries. We have our global 2030 goals. We need them to be aligned in that way. And so having and involving more stakeholders at the forefront towards getting through that pipeline is absolutely the answer.
Thank you, Nicholas, for your remarks. We have highlighted how resource efficient and effective allocation is effective in ensuring sustainable solutions and approaches, as well as partnerships and connections that are crucial to addressing the issues and challenges. Thank you to all three of the esteemed speakers. And now we would love to interact with our audience. And please feel free to ask our esteemed speakers questions. We have time for one question. I see that we have input from you. sharing your appreciation for esteemed speakers, and sharing your experiences on how you work towards improving the lives of people, especially those from vulnerable and marginalized communities. And thank you for your participation today. And please feel free to enter any questions that you may have in the chat. And thank you for sharing your appreciation to the International Youth Conference team. And while we are waiting for a question to come from our audience, I would like to turn to our esteemed speakers to see if you have any remarks for all of us and our audience who are joining us from around the world, especially on the topic of poverty, food disparity, and empowerment for upward mobility. And I see that we are coming to the close of our session, so this can be our closing remark.
I would just like to give a message to the youth because sometimes I think, because I had the same thoughts too when I was young, thinking that, oh, I need to get to a certain age to be able to start participating and start bringing my ideas to fruition. But you can actually start from right there. So my message to the youth will be, to the young people around the world, is you are the future leaders. You are the future leaders. You are the innovators. You are the change makers. You have the power to change the world we live in, and to actually create a world that you want to be able to smile about, in 20, 30, 40 years. You have the power to shape everything that, because when I started my organization, starting it's been years ago, and now things that's happening, there are things that we're creating. We're co-creators, and we're creating things as we go along. Don't be afraid to dream big, to speak out and take action. I want the youth to embrace their uniqueness, their creativity, and your passion. Use them to make a positive impact in your communities, in your countries, and in the world. And remember, the Sustainable Development Goals are your goals too. They're not just ours. So you need to hone it, hone them, work towards them, and demand that your leaders do the same. Make sure you get yourself familiar with the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. That's going to take us to 2030. And then in 2030, they're going to come up with another set. But those goals, there's things that you can work on right now, and you can be able to contribute to the SDG goal, Agenda 2030. You are the ones who can bring out the change we need. You are the ones who can create a world that is more just, more equitable, and more peaceful. Believe in yourself, believe in each other, and together, let's create a brighter future for all.
Thank you, Her Royal Highness Princess Dr. Moradeun Ogunlana. Lorena and Nicholas.
Thanks. I think I can follow, but yes, I was trying to also read a lot of the comments that were there. I really like one that says, when you educate a girl, you don't just empower an individual, you break the cycle of poverty for generations to come. So kudos to the person that wrote that. And I think in general, I would say do not lose the capacity of dreaming and the passion towards what you do. And one of the questions also that I wrote in the chat was, what are the things that you think we should not do if we're trying to what should we avoid as future change makers? So the first thing in that statement or question is, you are not only the future change makers. Yes, maybe you're the future leaders because you're building in your experience to have the positions at the government level or international organizations, but you are already the change makers. By changing social media or talking about what you care or what you don't like about governments or public initiatives or even the private sector, when you have your voice and you have these ideas and you change the world with your behaviors in the station, in the states or whatever place you are in a little organization, in a grassroots, in a CSO, you're already making the change. I was reading also a lot of comments of volunteers. So you're already making the change. So for that, I will say the things that I would avoid will be the skepticism. Sometimes we can be with the world overly skeptical, and that can hinder our ability to see the opportunities and to innovate. And I think that are two things that you have the most: the innovation, the creativity. So do not be skeptical about the world. Sometimes it's difficult, but that can prevent us to take the bold steps that we need to go to follow. Also, really related to avoid pessimism when facing significant challenges. And I think for that, youth are really resilient. So just keep doing it, keep believing in yourself and your voice and your capacity of change the things. And finally, yeah, just prevent yourself from burnout, working our mental health and like working with communities, but also with coworkers, colleagues, or people that are in the same volunteers like us, just talking to each other about the challenges we're facing and prioritizing our well-beings. I think that's also a part of that. New generations are doing better than older generations, including mine. So I think just keep doing that, keep doing taking care of yourself, prioritizing yourself, but also taking care of the communities that is already changing the world.
Thank you, Lorena. Nicholas.
Yeah, I'd echo what Lorena and her. Hold on, sorry. Yeah, I was saying I'd echo what Lorena and Her Royal Highness is saying. It's absolutely important for us to at least start where we're at. Um, it's very easy to become overwhelmed in this space, in the space of, at least in the era of just trying to make a change, because you're pretty much combating against generational systems that have not been able to adapt as quickly or as nimbly as this generation and future generations will. And so you have to bear that in mind whenever you move towards trying to make any type of change or advocate for something. It will require a lot of patience. It will require a lot of grace. It will require a lot of self-preservation. And in doing all of this, it is important for you to at least focus on the things that you can tackle today, so that you can look towards things that you can tackle tomorrow through different lens, and to ensure that you don't embark on any form of burnout. As Lorena mentioned, it is absolutely important for you to just take your time and to be more self-aware with how in tune you're able to give yourself towards whatever cause that you believe in championing. And so that is pretty much all I'd like to say on that. But I would echo what both the esteemed panelists were saying. Keep dreaming. There's no reason for you to stop. We're at just like a stage in humanity where it's very it's things are a bit more accessible for us to try to make the change as opposed to a few hundred years ago. And so in knowing that, I absolutely believe that it is important for us to just stay the true and steady path towards believing in the things that we want to do, whether it be to tackle climate change or tackle injustices within human rights, or even look towards involving more youth in certain causes. It is absolutely important for us to keep believing and thriving in that way.
Those are important messages. Thank you, esteemed speakers. Now we are coming to the close of the session. I want to thank our esteemed speakers for contributing to this important session on poverty, food disparity, and empowerment for upward mobility. I also want to thank the audience for participating and attending the session. I wish you all a great day and may we meet again soon. Goodbye.